afternoon to all. Today let me just introduce the topic on phonetics and phonology. Okay, so today we'll be discussing with what is phonetics and the related principles, so called as phonology. Okay, as phonology. So when we are talking about this, we should remember that these are the these two subjects, so called as the phonetics and phonology. They are the two branches of linguistics that deal with speech sounds. So when we talk about phonetics and phonology, we are talking about the branches that comes under the linguistics as such. But these two branches deal with speech sounds. That is the thing which you keep in mind. That when we talk about phonetics, phonetics is primarily an experimental science which studies speech sounds from three viewpoints. They are production, acoustic, and perception. When we talk about production, it means like how sounds are made in the human vocal tract, and it is also called as articulatory phonetics, right? And when we say about the acoustics, yes, it's the study of the waveforms by which speech is transmitted through the atmosphere. So the study of the waveforms by which speech is transmitted through the atmosphere comes under the acoustics. Okay. Next point is that on the perception. That means how the incoming acoustic signal is processed to detect the sound sequence originally intended by the speaker. So these are something that relates with what phonetics is all about. Again, phonology is also sometimes an experimental science, though it also involves a fair degree of formal analysis and abstract theorizing. The primary data on which phonological theory rests are phonetic data. That is, observations of the phonetic form of utterances. You see, the goal of phonology is to understand the tacit system of rules that the speaker uses in apprehending and manipulating the sounds of her language. So this is according to Halsey 2009. Now when we talked about production, yes, it means how sounds are made in the human vocal tract. So the very term vocal tract designates all the portions of the human anatomy through which air flows in the course of speech production. This includes, if you see from bottom to top, you could see the lungs and lower respiratory passage, then the larynx, which we colloquially known as voice box. This is the primary but not the only source of the sound in speech production, which will deals in the consequent classes. The passage above the larynx, called the pharynx, oral cavity, the mouth and nasal cavity. So you see, we do have lungs, then your bronchial tubes. Then it comes to what we call it as trachea or the windpipe, and then on top of this trachea you could see the larynx, which is very much visible to the adult male. Here the very voice box is is visible when you see a bit protruding, you could see on the male adult males. So then above that we do have the pharynx, and then comes your oral cavity, and then your nasal cavity. These are the vocal tracts which you could see. So the larynx is a complex structure of cartilage and muscle located in the neck, and partly visible, that is what I have just now said, partly visible in adult males whose larynxes are the largest, as we also know as Adam's apple. So the larynx contains the vocal cord, right? I am saying C-O-R-D, not C-H-O-R-D. It is C-O-R-D, okay? Vocal cord, which are parallel flaps of tissue extending from each side of the interior larynx wall. So the vocal cords have a slit between them called the glottis. The vocal cords are held at their rear ends by two small cartilage called the arytenoid cartilages. Since these cartilages are mobile, they can be used to adjust the distance between the vocal cords. So when the vocal cords are held tight together, the sound known as a glottal stop is produced. It can be heard in the middle of the expression when we say uh-oh. So the middle of the expression uh-oh in between is used as a speech sound in many languages. Now, if the vocal cords are placed close to each other but not tightly, right? But not tightly shut, and there is sufficient airflow from the lungs, then the vocal cords will vibrate, creating voicing. So this is the configuration shown when we talk about the like how the positions of this voicing and voiceless. When we looked into it, voicing is in such a way, as I told you, that the vocal cords are held tightly together, right? But are not tightly together. If it is tightly together, then it is what? Glottal stop. But here in the case of voicing, remember, when the vocal cords are held close to each other, not tightly together like this, but are placed close to each other, but not tightly. I repeat, they are held to what? They are held or they are placed close to each other, but not tightly shut. And there is sufficient airflow from the lungs. Then the vocal cord will vibrate, which we say that it creates what we call it as voicing. Clear? So the vocal cord can also be spread somewhat apart. Okay, so that air passing through the glottis creates turbulent noise. This is the way an ha sound is produced. So the vocal cords are spread further still for normal breathing, in which air flows through the larynx is smooth and silent. When you are sitting and listening my lecture, what the position of your larynx is, that what will it be? Yes, the vocal cords are spread farther, right, for normal breathing, in which airflow through the larynx is smooth and silent. So this is the things that you have to know what are voicing, what are the sounds being created when the voice cord is being tightly held together. What sound does it produce, right? All these things. Now the cartilage of the larynx, especially the thyroid cartilage to which the front ends of the vocal cords attach, can stretch and slacken the vocal cords, thus raising and lowering the pitch of the voice. So this is somewhat analogous to the changes in pitch that occur when a guitar string is tightened or loosened. Right. Sorry. So sound created at the larynx is modified and filtered as it passes through the upper vocal tract. The main route through the upper vocal tract is a kind of arc, right? Starting vertically upwards from the larynx and bending forward through the mouth. There is an opening about halfway from larynx to lips called the velar port, through which air can pass into the nasal passage and outwards through the nostrils. So let's first cover the upper surface of the upper vocal tract, that is the roof of the mouth and the back of the pharynx. Then we'll come to the lower surface or the floor of mouth, continued as the front wall of the pharynx. See, when we let's see in the next, you can see here the slide of how the particular this oral tract has been discussed here also. Now coming to the upper surface. The upper surface comprises of the upper lip, the upper teeth, the alveolar ridge, that is a bony ridge just behind the base of the upper teeth. Most people can feel their alveolar ridge by moving the tongue along the roof of the mouth. So the hard palate, which is that part of the roof of the mouth underlain by bone. You can feel the hard palate and its rear edge with the tip of your tongue. Please do it and see whether you can feel that. Now the velum or soft palate, this is a flap of soft tissue that separates the mouth from the nasal passage. It is attached at the front, that is to the hard palate, and at the side, but hangs loose at its rear edge. Various muscles can raise and lower the velum. When the velum is high, then the velar port is closed and air is confined to the oral passage. So you see, when the velum is in the upright position, right? What happened? The air that comes out from the lungs passes through your larynx and then your pharynx and your oral. As the velum is in the upright position, what happened? Your velar port is also closed. So the air coming out from the lungs has to pass through the oral cavity. But when the velum is in the lowered position, what happened? It opened the velar port. So what happened? The air that comes from the lungs has to pass through the velar port, leading it out towards the nostril, and it comes out. So that makes the position of the velum and the opening of the velar port is something that distinguishes what are the oral and nasal processes of sound, right? So the uvula is the little thing that dangles from the edge of the velum is called the uvula. Latin words for that means little grabs. So the uvula is vibrated, where we get the sound so called as trill. as a speech sound in some languages. Next, it comes the pharynx. Once we are past the velum, we are no longer in the mouth proper, but in the rearward part of the upper vocal tract, commonly called the pharynx. The rear pharyngeal wall is continuous and has no significant landmarks all the way down to the larynx. Now, the crucial parts of the lower surface of the upper vocal tracts let us again look into. It comprises of the lower lip and the tongues, and the tongue rests on the jaw, which raises and lowers the upper lip and tongue when it moves during speech. So the lower lip is more mobile than the upper in speaking, though both move considerably. They can touch one another, closing the mouth, or the corners of the lips can be pulled in, creating lip rounding. So the tongue is somewhat deceptive in its size and shape. The parts that are obvious to an external observer for the tongue are the tip, right? Sometimes it is also called the apex, and the blade. These are merely an appendage to the much larger tongue body, also called the dorsum, a roundish muscular body that can move in all directions. Movement of the dorsum or the tongue body can radically change the shape of the vocal tract, a fact that is crucial in the production of distinct vowel sounds. So the rear surface of the dorsum is called the tongue root. Behind it, a flap called the epiglottis is present. So now when we know about what and how the sounds are made in this vocal tract, let us describe the speech sounds. So let us now focus with describing speech sounds. See, the common sense distinctions of vowels and consonants is a generally valid one for phonetics and phonology. Roughly, vowels are highly sonorous sounds made with a relatively open vocal tract. Consonants involve some kind of constriction or more than one constriction in the vocal tract. They are quieter than vowels and often are detectable by the ear, not so much by their own sound as by the transitional acoustic events that occur at the boundaries of consonants and vowels. Consonants are classified along the dimension, that is voicing, place of articulations, and manner of articulation. Voicing. In a voiced consonant, the vocal cords vibrate. For example, S sound, for which the IPS symbol is simply S, is voiceless. Whereas the Z sound in IPA, you could see that Z is voice. If you say S, Z, while placing the palm of your hand firmly on the top of your head, you should feel the vibration of Z, Z, but not with S, right? Now, coming to the place of articulations, there are the varied places where the constriction is being taken while making the consonant sounds, such as bilabial sounds are made by touching the upper and lower lips together. English has a voiceless bilabial stop P and a voice labial stop B. right? And also a voice bilabial nasal m. So when we talk about it, p voiceless, right? But bilabial, b voice, bilabial, and m bilabial, and it is nasal stop, because this is the sounds that are being created when the air passes through the velar port and then it passes through your nostrils, right? So, not that the descriptions just given follows the standard form for describing a consonant voicing, then place, okay, consonant voicing, then place of articulation, then manner. In the case of nasals and approximant, which are normally voiced, it is commonly specified only place and manner. Now, when we talk about the labiodental sounds are made by touching the lower lip to the upper lip, okay? So English has a voiceless labiodental fricative f and a voice v. Dental sounds are made by touching the tongue to the upper teeth. This can be done in a number of ways. If the tongue is stuck out beyond the teeth, the sound is called an interdental dental sounds, though we will not be concerned with so fine distinctions. English has a voiceless dental fricative th, that when you say thin, th, and a voiced one the when you say the boy, or when you talk about the cat, right? So alveolar sounds are made by touching the tip or blade of the tongue to a location just forward of the alveolar ridge. English has a voiceless alveolar stop th, a voiced alveolar stop d, voiceless and voiced alveolar fricative s and z, both of them are sibilants, a voiced alveolar nasal n, right? A voiced alveolar lateral approximant l, and a voiced alveolar central approximant r. Again, we have a place so-called as the palato-alveolar sounds, sometimes called post-alveolar, are made by touching the blade of the tongue to a location just behind the alveolar ridge. English has a voiceless palato-alveolar fricatives. Sh, say a voiced when you talk about shoe, then a voiceless palato-alveolar fricative ch, church, and a voiced palato-alveolar affricates. So palato-alveolar affricates ch, such as church, and then the voiced palato-alveolar affricates such as judge, like j. So retroflex sounds are made by curling the tongue tip backward and touching the area just behind the alveolar ridge. Some English speakers lack the alveolar approximant r and instead have a retroflex one transcript is r. Stops and affricates are common in language in India and Australia. In the strict sense of the term, the palato-alveolar and retroflex have the same place of articulation. The same place on the roof of the mouth is contracted. They differ in the part of the tongue, blade or tip, that makes the contact. Conventionally, however, palato-alveolar and retroflex are referred to be as separate place of articulation. Again, coming to palatal sounds, when you talk about palatal sounds are made by touching the tongue blade and the forward part of the tongue body to the hard palate. Y, so when you say young, okay, is sometimes described as a palatal approximant. So when we have just discussed about the stop sounds, when there is complete stoppage of the air presses, airflow. When you make a constriction, when I say pa, your two lips makes the air to stop for some times and then release with a pa, what plosive sounds. That is what plosion or stop is all about. So, but the airflow is being stopped completely. That is the manner of articulation, stop. Then just now we have talked about fricatives, where the airflow is being narrowed and the air passes through that narrowed when the articulatus comes narrowed and making it in such a way through that narrow passage the airflow pass throughout, with giving you a hissing sound such as s, right, all the sounds. So that creates the fricatives, that is the manner. And affricates, as we have just seen, affricates comprise of the stop and the fricative. So that's how when you pronounce church, first your tongue touch your alveolar like you do pronounce t, but it's such a rapid, and then it just slowly releases with sh, and so that's what church comes, isn't it? Or church. So, but the tongue touches that is stop to t for the church and for d for the case of judge, and the releasing fricatives, as you say, the sound that comes followed after the stop is in such a way that it creates a hissing sound zzz for the judge and ch for the judge, right? So these are all the manners of articulation, and what we are just discussing about the place where the constrictions being taken place, that is what we have been discussing here. The palatal we have come to know met by touching the tongue blade and the forward part of the tongue body to the hard palate, right? So coming to velar sounds are made by touching the body straight back to touch the uvula, and sorry, for velar I'm talking about by touching the body of the tongue to the heart, or in between you see its adjacent, but the tongue when it touches to a soft palate, some portions may be to the heart, that is what it means. But actually velar sounds, when you produce it, the tongue comes close to your soft palate, okay? So velar sounds made by touching the body of the tongue to the soft palate. English has three velar sounds: a voiceless velar stop ka, a voice velar stop ga, right? And a velar nasal ng, such as in English when you write the very sound, this is ng for the words, such as when you say sing, right? So this is velar sound. Now coming to uvular sounds are made by moving the tongue body straight back to touch the uvula and neighboring portions of the soft palate. When we talk about the in French and German, they have the uvula ra, which is usually in IPA you could see it's written in a capital ra. Okay, the sounds are available, as well as the nasal consonant that occurs at the end of many words in Japanese, transcribed with this nga, but it is written in IPA. You could see it's pronounced by many people as uvula, where it is usually denoted with the capital N or na, right? So pharyngeal sounds are made by moving the tongue body down and back into the pharynx. A voiceless pharyngeal fricatives, usually in your IP which I have supplied to you. There you could see how the symbols of the voiceless fricatives being transcribed there. Again, coming to the glottal sounds are made by moving the vocal cord close to one another. So sound, when you talk about glottal sounds, sounds which are made by moving the vocal cords close to one another. English has a voiceless glottal fricative h that starts the initial letter with you're writing H, H-A-T. So that h is your glottal fricatives. When we discuss with the various sound of what vowels are, what consonants are, let me just introduce with you what diphthongs, okay? What diphthongs are. When we talk about a diphthong, you see that diphthong is a sequence of two vowels. Diphthongs is a sequence of two vowels that functions as a single sound. Even though they have two vowels, they function as a single sound. Further, a diphthong always forms just one syllable, whereas a two vowel sequence forms two. So you can transcribe a diphthong by stringing together two vowel symbols denoting its beginning and optionally connecting them with a ligature. And when you see any ligature with it, be it say, for instance, if it is A, then a ligature is putting like this, or in the diacritics it is Clyde. Also, it also shows the very diphthongs in it. So what happened is that noticeably English has numerous diphthongs. The very example in day-to-day you're using the word boy, right? And then like when you say how are you, how, the ow is also a diphthong. And again, one thing that you should remember, that diphthong, anyways, the difference between the two component vowels is more subtle, and a rough transcription can use a monophthong vowels. When you say monophthongs are the pure vowels, such as when I say sin, so sa, e, na, isn't it? So you have only one monophthongs, right? So what happened when we talk about this, one thing we should remember regarding with another thinking that syllabic or the syllabic is only where you do find in words that have the peak, that is vowels only, and vowels plays the most prominent part in a syllable. But remember, there are also some consonants which are known as syllabic consonants, right? When we talk about it, it is possible for sounds that are normally consonants to be pronounced slightly and serve as a nucleus of a syllable. Such sounds are called syllabic consonants. They are transcribed by placing the syllable. You'll see that how the words, when you talk about, say, butter. So what happened, the very syllabic which you do find it, that particular is not played with any vowels, but na, that is the syllabic, so butter, none. That na is what we call it as the syllabic consonant. So like this, we also come to know how we can like differentiate the various functions of the vowels, then coming to the consonants. Then what about the sounds, with the speech sounds? How do they produce it? Say either is it voicing. So when you label it, you should know the very consonants. What are the status of that vocal, of that voice and voiceless relating to that sound matters. For consonant, you need to see the very the manner, I should say, manner of articulation, where just now I have said in the case of stopped airflow through the mouth is momentarily closed off. This can be done by the two lips forming t or d, then by the tongue body touching the palate, right, forming k and g, etc. These are the stop sounds. And then fricatives, when I say a tight constriction is made so that air passing through the constriction flows turbulently and making a hissing noise. So some of the fricatives, as you know, when we say about the sound of thing, of fan, van, right? These are all, and you could see that in sibilant fricatives, the mechanism of production is more complex. A stream of air is directed at the upper teeth, creating noisy, turbulent flow. So the remember four sibilant fricatives of English are s, z, sh, the first sound of when you say shine, and z, the very consonant when you spelled sir in pleasure. So pleasure is what when you pronounce it as pleasure, z, that z is your sibilant fricatives. Again, an affricate, as I said, is a stop followed by a fricative made at the same location. Remember, made at the same location in the mouth in rapid succession, so that the result has the typical durations of a single speech sound. So English has two affricates, as I said, voiceless ch as in church, and voiced one j when you say judge. So you could see that in the IP which I have provided to you all chart, you can have a clear what are all these sounds being. And again, one thing I just want to mention is that we have talked about the very word when we talk, say, approximant, isn't it? So approximant is a consonant in which the constriction is fairly wide, in which the constriction is fairly wide, so that air passes through without creating turbulence or trilling. So it could be lateral approximant for you when you let the air passes around the sides of the tongue when you pronounce a lie, love, 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 right? So in central approximant, the flow is through a gap in the center, and English dialects have at least three central approximant, namely y as in youth, then w as in wind, and r as in rain. So the last three categories which I have just now mentioned, sometimes they are represented with a different classification also, like the liquids, right? Liquids are the sound that have the characteristic acoustic quality of l-like and r-like sounds. So these term groups l and similar sounds together with tap, r, and trill, r, approximant ra, and various similar sounds under this same scheme. The glides are also known as semivowels. They are the central approximant, that is y, w, and similar sounds cover. So, and we have also just now discussed about what the place of articulations when you're talking about the very this consonant of this which we have just now discussed about the bilabial, labial, then dental, alveolar, retroflex, and velar, then glottal sounds and all. So now let's focus with the vowels. Okay. So when we talk about vowels, vowels differs from consonants in that they do not have places of articulations, that is points of major constriction in the vocal cord or vocal tract. Sorry, not vocal cord, but in the vocal tract. Now, rather the vocal tract as a whole acts as a resonating chamber, modifying the shape of this chamber using movements of the tongue, jaws and lips causes different timbres to be imparted to the basic sound produced at the vocal cords. So there are three basic modifications that one can make to the shape of the vocal tract. Vowels are described by specifying each modification's use based on rounding, right? Where you could see the roundedness of your lips when you pronounce the word, say boot, right? Or book, and when I say boat, right? These are all rounded and simply round vowels. So vowels such as if I say E for bead, right? Or cut, that R when I pronounce it, it is unrounded. Again, the another dimensions or the criteria for these classifying these vowels, not only roundedness or unroundedness, but the height. Another modifications where one can make to the shape of the vocal tract is to make the passes through the mouth wider or narrower. So widening is accomplished by opening the jaw and or lowering the body of the tongue towards the bottom of the mouth. Narrowing is accomplished by raising the jaw and or raising the body of the tongue. So you could see that vowels are classified as high, mid, low, or you could see the very thing in some literatures you may find close, then mid, open, or you will find the very changes into like open, because if you find, if you look with the various, not only these, if you look into how the, if you say close, mid, or open, mid, the various positions of that particular vowels, you can also classify that. In IPA you must have seen how you please refer with that. Now into that chart which I have just now provided to you all. See to it and it will be very easier to understand. So when we talk about these things, then one criteria is backwardness. Means this is the third primary way of changing the vocal tract shape is to place the body of the tongue towards the front part of the mouth or towards the back. So vowels so made are called front and back vowels respectively, and vowels that are neither front nor back are called central. For example, when you talk about beat, that E is a high front unrounded vowels, and when I talk about boot, that oo vowels appears in many languages. You could see that it is your high back rounded vowels, right? So these are the ways where you do have, and we can see how the IPA chart according to front, then central, back, close, which is equivalent to high, or close mid equivalent to upper mid, open mid, which is equivalent to literatures you will find as lower mid, and open, which is equivalent to what we say low. So that's how the sound you can see to the symbols which have been displayed there. And then coming to the sounds where glide vowels correspondence, you could see that the glides orders can be described in two ways, because they are essentially the non-syllabic equivalents of vowels, that is the semi-vowels. So here in IPA terms, a central palatal central approximant, but it is also describable as a high front unrounded glide, and is thus the consonant counterpart of E. Likewise, wa is a labial velar central approximant, but it is also treatable as a high back rounded glide, the counterpart of U. So now, as we have discussed the various phonetics, covering all the productions and all, especially the articulatory phonetics parts. Let me just introduce with you what is the various phonology point of view for you to understand. See, phonology tends to be more abstract because when you compare with phonetics, we have been studying these speech sounds in ways that are close to the speech stream, focusing on production, acoustics and perception extra, isn't it? But when we are talking about phonology, it tends to be more abstract, dealing not directly with the physical nature of speech sounds, though that is of course quite relevant, but rather with the largely unconscious rules for sound patterning that are found in the mind or brain of a person who speaks a particular language. So coming into this, just want to introduce that the sound of a language are intrinsically meaningless. Their only purpose is to build the building blocks of which words are made. For example, because English has a sound t and d. By saying t and d, you cannot, this is something where you will say that intrinsically it is meaningless. But you see the possible exist of English, you see having the word when I write time, okay, which is distinct from the word dime. So one could put it this way: the only real purpose of a speech sound is to sound different from the other sounds to the language. This is what makes spoken vocabulary possible.